Kevin, my first question I have to you, I'm not sure whether everyone is aware. You have been president and CEO of DoubleClick here in New York, founder and chairman of Business Insider. You still are heavily invested and involved in the company. You founded and are chairman of MongoDB. You're founder and chairman of Gilt, and as Jeffy said, on Zola, which is one of your recent, 2013 started company. And you said you're also building something new, which you won't release here today, but hopefully you might say something. The first question I have to you is, you had an early professional life in investment banking. Did that help you, having, after your MBA in INSEAD, having years of experience in that sector, becoming a founder and entrepreneur in the digital field?
So I was in investment banking after undergraduate and before business school for 4 years. And actually, I loved doing it. So I think it was more just general professional knowledge, international. It wasn't anything specific that would lead me to this. I always say that I think that the preparation I had in running student groups, in high school and college, I was the type of person that ended up running a lot of student organizations. And in some ways, I think that's the best training because people don't have to show up. They don't have to come the next day. It's a volunteer organization. And so the only reason they show up is because they think it's fun and they feel like there's a mission. You're doing something that's important and they're going to get something out of it. And that, in a competitive work environment, is good training. You know, every one of the engineers that works in one of my companies can take 2 hours this afternoon and get 3 new job offers. So they're only going to stay and get involved unless they're having fun and believing in the mission.
And when was the time that you said, I'm not the right guy for investment banking, I would like to change and go on internet business and become a founder?
So I always knew I wanted to run a company. And I thought I was going to go up the path of being banking to CFO to then running a traditional company. Now, I didn't know about the internet because it didn't really exist from a commercial point of view. So I worked for a large media company in '95. I started a website called the Dilbert website. It became quite successful. I asked the parent company if they wanted to invest more in the internet. They said, no, it's going to cannibalize, and we don't know if it's going to work. And so they said no. So then I thought, I'll go do it on my own. And so that ultimately led me 6 months later to DoubleClick.
To run your company.
Yeah.
You have started and founded all your companies in New York City.
Yeah.
Well, if you talk to venture capitalists in the Silicon Valley, that is almost impossible. What was the reason that you made that decision here to start the companies in New York?
So first of all, I tell everyone today, you know, you want to live wherever you want to live. So I started by saying, where's the place I want to live for the next, 30 years? And so for me, it's New York. I like the international aspect. I like the global aspect. I had worked, since college, I've worked and lived in either Paris, London, or New York. And so San Francisco is great, but I prefer being here. My wife is French. We go to Europe a lot, so I want to be. Now, in '96, that was a much tougher decision because there were no venture capitalists. There was very few. There was no infrastructure, so that was much harder. Today, arguably in some of the areas I'm in, New York is the obvious place. If you said online media, there hardly are any big online media companies in San Francisco. So whether it's Huffington Post or BuzzFeed or Business Insider or Gawker or Upworthy or Mike.com, they're all in New York. So a lot of the big ones are really here. So it's the right place. It's also the right place for fashion, for ad tech. And what you're going to see now is that even things like Mongo, which is the one company that no one thought a database company could be created in New York. We have 6 direct competitors that are all in San Francisco, and we're winning pretty convincingly.
And Kevin, don't you have a competitive advantage in the Silicon Valley where you have Stanford producing hundreds of fantastic engineers over all different subjects? Where are the engineers coming from here in New York City?
So, don't forget, New York's a very big city. So we, in the numbers, have as many engineers as San Francisco. San Francisco is still the startup capital of the world. New York is growing faster. I think 20 years from now, there'll be many subsectors where New York continues to grow or dominate. But San Francisco is a fantastic place. They happen to be on generation 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of their entrepreneurs. You're seeing here, I'm a good example of sort of second generation entrepreneur. One success leading to some other successes. There are 34 people from DoubleClick who are now have been CEOs of various companies. So you're watching that chain, that not just us, I happen to know DoubleClick, but there are other things happening and other little mafias that are growing. And so New York's going to continue to grow. At the end of the day, internet companies only need one thing. We need talented people. And often often younger people and often engineering. And if New York, if that's where they want to live in the United States, that's where companies will be successful.
What is your perspective on the global startup scene? If you see China or Europe, you have been lived, as you said, in Paris, in Europe for quite a long time.
And I grew up actually in Switzerland.
In Switzerland, as you said. What is your perspective on it? Is there any country in the world, any region, which has the ability, from your perspective, being as competitive as the American landscape?
Look, I mean, I think you could argue that China is as competitive or more competitive. I mean, it's extraordinary what's happening in China. And I don't compete in that area because I think it's almost impossible for non-Chinese companies to be successful in the Chinese market, whether it's done according to the rules or not. No one ends up being that successful, 100%. So I don't play there, but it's an unbelievable market and soon to be bigger, if not bigger than the US market. Europe is doing much better than it was 8 years ago. I mean, 8 years ago, if we were sitting here, I would have told you there's not a single publicly traded internet company in Europe worth $1 billion, and there were probably 25 at the time in the United States. The fragmentation of the market makes it harder. The lack of VC money has made it harder. Work rules have made it harder. So that's made it very tough. But now you're seeing promise. I mean, they're very talented people, and Europe is doing much, much, much better than it was 7 years ago.
And I think, Kevin, it will be one of the biggest change you will see in the next 2 or 3 years, that Europeans have now realized how important the digital changes for the overall society, for all industrial sectors. And yesterday we saw the Commission releasing a paper of about 20 pages what they want to change. And I can tell you as a European, there will be a lot of change within Europe until end of next year concerning the same rights of data using within Europe, taxes. They work on it, and I'm very positive in the future.
Yeah, I'm actually not as positive. As you know, there's no Europe. There's a series of countries, and so in France, for example, France is not a good example. We had a meeting last week with I met with one of the presidential candidates in France, and I said, people avoid putting jobs in France.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Even though I would make that the European headquarters of every one of my companies if all rules were the same. Talented people, everyone, it's so central, great infrastructure. If I go to any executive and say to a guy and say, go home and ask your wife if you guys want to move to Paris, he comes back and says, please move you to Paris. We'd love to live there. And yet we all avoid it because labor costs are probably, at the end of the day, 80 to 100% more. And so it's difficult. So they don't, and the cost there is not I probably have 300 people in Europe, but it's that 30 of them within the next 3 years, unfortunately for me, would have spun off, started a new company, joined a startup, started that second, third generation, and so those jobs are not there. So it's hindering.
Kevin, I think it's good that you are talking to the French presidential candidate, because German politicians have talked long time to the French to do the same what you're saying, and obviously we haven't been very successful.
No, I didn't say I'm going to make any progress.
Changing labor rules in France, but it is very clear for digital business. Yeah. We had with our companies a very similar situation in France, and I think it will improve now, but it's a lot more to do within the next 4, 5, 6 years.
And Germany is doing much better, but I'd argue that certainly Scandinavia is doing even better than per capita than most of the other countries.
Yeah, coming back to you as a founder of diverse companies, you have been both B2B and B2C.
Yeah.
From edtech, publishing, we talk a bit in a minute, to e-commerce. What is the one thing you would say is crucial for you if you look into an idea or possible many ideas why you choose the idea to go forward?
No, I think you're politely saying I have no sense of focus whatsoever, which is true, or a short attention span in some ways. Yeah, I don't look at it top down. So I don't say I want to go do a company in this area very much. It's really bottom up. So I see opportunities. I'm thinking all the time of opportunities. I'm thinking of tangential opportunities that I see here. I see examples where there's a problem, and I think I can solve it. And sometimes I'm thinking of an idea right now in healthcare. It could be another one in financial services. So these just happen to be ideas, and they have to be something that I think is a pretty big market. I'd like to feel when I start something that I think it can be worth $1 billion, to just choose a round number. That there's a big enough opportunity. You don't always get there, but at least it's worth having fun with and competing with. And I've just got to find it intellectually interesting myself. So for example, the thing I don't do ever, I never do ad technology. only because I did it for 9 years, and I'm just
You're done.
And I think it's a good sector, and you should do it. But I'm bored of it. I just want to do other things. So that's why I do things that I haven't done before, which I normally don't advise to people, but it's what keeps me very excited.
Okay, let's talk about one of your widely seen projects, Business Insider.
Yeah.
Where are you standing at the moment from your perspective concerning the development of the company? It was very hard to finance a company, as far as you understood, to find people who really are willing to put money into?
Absolutely. When in the very beginning, when I went out with this idea, and I ran the idea by people in 2007, everyone told me, really, it was just a terrible idea. They said there are 50 business sites, no one needs another one, you have no technology advantage. And then I found Henry Blodgett and brought him on board, and then people said, on top of it being a bad idea, in a bad industry, the two of you have no media background. So this really has nothing going for it. But we started, and today, traffic in terms of uniques, we're now 50, 60% bigger than the Wall Street Journal. It's the #1 business news site in the world. We've never spent $1 on advertising. So it's just on the value of the content. Henry has done an incredible job of building this. It's growing at 80% a year right now. It's profitable in the fourth quarter. It's really going well.
When you say profitable fourth quarter, means profitable for 1 quarter?
Yeah.
Or did it turn into break even in the fourth quarter?
No, it's profitable in the fourth quarter and could be easily profitable for this year. Now, this year, we started the year with 200 employees. We will end the year somewhere between 350 and 400. So it's very hard, any business, to add 70, 80% more people and be profitable. But we could have easily made lots of money this year. So yeah, the fundamentals look great, and it's a bigger, if you'd asked me 3 years ago, I thought it was a good-looking opportunity, and now it's going to be much bigger than I thought. I'm hopeful, and this may or may not happen, I think 18 months from now we'll have a chance of being the #1 news site in the world. So I think we can surpass the New York Times and CNN over time.
That sounds great. Kevin, if you come to monetization of that side, if you look at recent released Comscore data, it's clear that the digital budget for Facebook and Google, if you look into the projections for 2016 and 17, will rather grow than shrink. And that existing, let's say, advertising business model are under pressure because there are two at least 800-pound gorillas in the room. What is your perspective on monetization, your side, and how do you compete? What is your view on the new Facebook initiative to bring content exclusively or non-exclusively on Facebook?
So a couple of different things there. One is on the Facebook side, Facebook does drive, for any internet content company right now, 20 to 40% of its traffic. If you're BuzzFeed, I don't know this, it's probably 60%, and someone else maybe less. So it's a huge percentage. And so right now, Facebook is undercharging. I mean, imagine if I came to you and said, by the way, I'll drive 25% of your traffic. I bet you as a content company would pay me a lot of money for that. And right now they don't really charge for that. But over time they will because they're running a business. So I think they'll extract what they deserve actually over time. I don't worry about that strategically. They need to have an ecosystem, just like Google. They need to have an ecosystem of very successful content players. They take a piece if they drive traffic, which they do, and they'll work that over time. Now, if they execute it badly, it won't work, and no one will play with them. And if they do, they'll be an important part of it. But look, my full disclosure, my brother is a senior executive. My younger brother is senior executive at Facebook. But the execution in general at Facebook has been extraordinary. I mean, 60% profit margins, still growing at whatever, 60% a year.
And having a mobile model.
And execution at every level. I mean, we can't forget, it's only probably 4 years ago that everyone was laughing at Yuri Milner for investing at a $10 billion valuation in Facebook. And now that he's made 20 times his money, people are laughing not quite as much.
Okay. Let's talk a minute about Gilt, where almost $300 million have been invested in some rounds. You have founded Gilt. Is the flash sales concept still working, or is it over and you have to do something new?
No. So the flash sales model in the world has been an enormous success. So the only one that's been around for 15 years is Vente Privée, which is probably worth $3 billion today and has still been growing. So that's the only grandfather of the business we can see so far. The three of the smaller ones, four of the smaller ones in the United States would be, because in China it works very well as well. Zulily, Gilt, One Kings Lane, and Rue La La, between them are doing probably $3 to $4 billion in revenue. all happening in a total of 7 years. So if you look at Yux or Net-a-Porter, each do $600 million, $700 million. Gilt is already that size in half the time. So these have built up big businesses. All retail businesses are tough businesses. It's tough to make money. So margins are never going to be like software margins. But I think all these companies are carving out big parts of retail.
And you say next plan here is IPO, as we just said?
Look, I'd answer certainly for Gilt and for Mongo, and a little bit further off for Business Insider. I actually never think about exit strategy. I think about building a big business and a profitable business. That's actually very hard. So if you can do that, you're in good shape and you have lots of options. You can go public, you can stay private, you can buy things, you can have different private equity investors. So none of them will go public this year, I don't think. 2016, maybe, and 2017 for some more. So it depends.
Depending on how large the company's valuation is, and
yeah, and also look, when we started DoubleClick, when DoubleClick started, we went public 24 months after it started, literally. You can't even do that anymore. Like most things that are that much fun, it's sort of illegal now. So it was crazy. Now, most companies, you want to stay private as long as possible. I mean, I never wake up and think, God, it'd be so much greater if we were public right now, and you could watch, your stock price go down for random reasons. And it's gotten worse, not so much because of Sarbanes-Oxley, but it's gotten worse because your investors are thinking about the next quarter. And most of my businesses, we can't do anything for next quarter. I can barely do anything that impacts 6 months from now.
So you rather keep them growing as long as they're stable enough, and that you then can play the rule of the stock market.
My general bias, which
feeds the beast.
And what you're seeing in so far, it's not that I would never sell anything, but I'm happy to hold companies for a long time. And as long as I feel like value is building and I feel good about the future, Business Insider is a good example. I'd be perfectly happy if we're sitting here 10 years from now and it's an independent company, public or private. I think it's going to grow for another decade.
A large media company then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about your last investment, Zola, which is the fastest growing e-commerce company in New York.
Yeah,
how's that developing?
No, Zola is, and it's not so much investment, but I started it. It's a good example, I think, where there are always opportunities in areas. So I'd get frustrated. I get invited to your wedding. Let's say we're both 32. You're registered at Bloomingdale's. I go on there and I see plates and glasses, and I'm just thinking, I don't want to get you glasses. That doesn't resonate. When you and I, used to go to Knicks games together or go skiing together or all these things, and none of it was on the registry. So I started a company that did all of that was more beautiful, that had a lot of features that were better. And so last year was our first year. We just got off the ground. We did $8 million in registry gifts that went through us. We're the retailer, so the cash, people buy from us. It's not like eBay where it's GMV. This year, locked in to do $40 million. I think we'll do $120 million next year. Because you can see in this business, you see your revenues easily 9 months ahead of time. And we already have 5,000 weddings for next year already locked in. So it's just a big opportunity, and it's a $10 billion sector, $20 billion sector, and I always tell people you want to be competing with the largest companies possible. It's the opposite of what your father told you when he went to a bar. Don't take on the really big guy because he'll beat you up. Here, take on the big guy. Go after Macy's, Bloomingdale's, Crate & Barrel, things like that. That's who you want to compete against. Yeah, I think it's a big opportunity, and it's half the team happens to be ex-Gilt, a lot of e-commerce expertise. We have 40 employees, so yeah, it's really fun.
Great. My last question to you, your next big thing. Mm-hmm. You said don't say it, but I won't say anything. Are you saying something?
Well, as long as we're amongst friends here, yeah, then. No, so in the media e-commerce space, I think there's still enormous opportunities. Anytime I see an area that's $50 to $100 billion of purchases, and I don't see one site where you can go there and figure out what you want to buy, and especially in the B2B space, I'm thinking more and more about the B2B space, that's where I want to start a company. So I started a company back in October. I have 12 people. I've raised $5 million, and it'll be announced in the next several weeks.
I'm very happy to hear that you will have a Berlin office,
yeah,
which is a very good sign for us.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
It's a global business, and so I think and Berlin's a great place to be located.
Absolutely. There's a red light always saying stop talking.
Oh, yeah.
But it's part of DLD that Kevin is around, and if you have any questions, he's a few minutes around here. Just don't hesitate to ask him. Thank you very much for this great entrepreneurial talk, and good luck with your new ventures.
Thank you. Thank you. Great.